Live from our studios, just steps from the fabulous Las Vegas Strip, it's The Business Lounge with your host, David Wright.
Hi, I'm your host, David Wright, and welcome back to the Business Lounge, where my guest today is Tony Dohrmann. We're going to continue our conversation, so if this seems a little out of place for you, you may want to go back and look at the previous episode of this program. I think it really sets the stage for people looking to be the entrepreneurs that America needs today and how to grow that into reality. So, Tony, welcome back. Thanks for sticking around.
Thank you.
I know you got a million things to do. Let's talk about your current venture. Let's talk about what you're currently doing. And I understand that this has been a venture in the making for quite some time.
It has.
So talk to me on how you came up with this particular concept for the electronic caregiver.
Well, I'll skip the long story, which is how did you get into the security business? I've been in a lot of different types of businesses. I've had landscape companies. I've had entrepreneurial consulting companies. We've run one of the nation's leading entrepreneurial seminars. People come in from all over the country and go through this big $5,000 week-long intensive with other entrepreneurs. And I have always kept a leg and a foot in the security industry. I like it. I like the idea of providing protection for people. Right? It's got this kind of heroic ingredient to it, and it provides a lot of fulfillment. And the other side of it is that it's a recurring revenue-based business, and I always thought that was smart. If the economy was great, people were buying stuff they wanted to protect, and if the economy was bad, everybody exploited the fear of bad economies, and a lot of that focus ends up on crime, and so people would buy security. And when somebody buys security for a home or a business, and they begin pinching pennies in a bad market, one of the last things they'll ever shut off is a life safety or security device. That's like water and electricity and having a telephone. They depend on it, right? They're going to cut back on their DirecTV or cable channels before they get rid of something that provides protection and peace of mind. So I like the reliability of the industry. In around 2006, 2007, we have a partner that provides emergency response. And they're out of Syracuse, New York. They have this huge, now 75,000 square foot facility, about 600 employees. They service about 600,000 end users in about 1,300 different companies. And we formed about 15 years ago a very intimate relationship between our ventures to launch a new security product in a way that it had never been done before. It was where you would get a plug-and-go security system right off of a retail shelf where everybody else had failed in the past. And our idea was, we understand why others have failed. We're going to get the sell-through. People are going to respond to the marketing. They're going to take this home. But on the way out of the store, they're going to stop at the customer service desk, and they're going to activate this for that monthly service plan, just like a cell phone. And it was a very, very big success in the industry. So around 2006, 2007, my monitoring partner said, I want you to get into the medical emergency response industry. And my association with that, we provided these systems. Security customers will call up and say, my mom has fallen, or my dad has had a heart attack. Do you have those things that they can wear around the neck? And we'd provide it. But to do that is a big commitment. My partner was asking me for a big commitment. He was ready to do this multi-million-dollar upgrade, put these emergency medical technicians in the seats. I didn't even know what an EMT was. And all I could associate with was these, what I perceived to be kind of these cheesy commercials from, I fall and I can't get up, right? Kind of life alerts of the world. And I didn't want to be that person. I really was looking to be up in our game. The technology really intrigues me. We were starting to branch off into some other types of technologies for home monitoring and home security. And so I kept putting it off. And I think what it ultimately was his name is Russell McDonnell. He's kind of a legend in the industry. He finally went through some stats and he said, look, I'm going to put a very sophisticated, start speaking the language I was looking for, very sophisticated back end. And it's going to cost me a lot of money. And I need somebody that can exploit this in the market, that can take the value of what we're going to deliver and bring it to the market. And most of this industry is built on, security industry is people that are tradespeople. They're more like electrical and low voltage type of in-home contractors. He said somebody needs to go out and do this on a big national scale, and you happen to have the marketing experience to be able to do that. And he began to give me the numbers, and that was the part that started to prick my heart, right? He said, 1/3 of seniors, 65 to 80, 1/3 of the entire population will fall this year, and it's the leading cause of accidental death, and it is the leading cause of traumatic brain injury. Well, I remembered on 9/11, flipping on the television set and seeing these, the smoke coming out of the towers and the second plane hitting. And then I got the call about my grandmother. My aunt had called and said, we're being attacked. And my grandmother is in her 70s, and she got up to run for the television and tripped around the table, fell, broke a hip. And one of the stats that Russ had given me was that if you have somebody laying there for 6 hours and they've got a broken hip and they're up over age 65, 60% of this group, if you don't get to them within 6 hours, is not going to be here in a year. My grandmother was, not found initially for hours, but she didn't make it. 9 months later, she was gone. And so, I started to pay attention. Now, when you get to 80 years old, it's half the population. Right? It's one of the leading reasons why, just falls alone, right? One of the leading reasons people end up in nursing homes. And as I started to explore this with him, we expounded on the market a bit, and we started to see, well, there's 80 million people have some form of cardiovascular disease, right? I mean, it could be they're a cardiac patient, or it could be that they have severe hypertension. There's 62 million people with respiratory disorders. There's people that are 1.5 million new cancer diagnosis every year, but there's 12 million survivors, and a lot of them are having a lot of problems because of chemotherapy and radiation. They've got kidney problems and liver problems and damage to stomach and tissue in their throats. And then you got strokes. I think there's about 750,000 people that have a stroke every year. And while we were going through this illustration, I had a friend that was my same age that had a stroke. And that it just starts compounding. I mean, it becomes personal. And, if you get up in front of a room and you say, how many of somebody's got diabetes? There's 25 million diabetics, 79 million pre-diabetics. If you say, do you know anybody in your circle who's fallen? Yes. Do you know anybody that's had, that has heart trouble? Yes. Do you know anybody who's been diagnosed with cancer? Yes. We all know these people. They're in and around our lives. And I saw that there's a big marketplace. And what Russell brought to me is he said, there's also a big need. The average length of time these people are down is 18 hours. And, you give them these necklaces around the neck. Well, these things are catching on drawers and causing falls. Sometimes they're catching on the way down and breaking people's necks. They have to have these tags on them, talk about how dangerous they are. Otherwise, you have to have that disclosure now on your product. And he said, and what about all these people that are down? They hit their head. They have a heart attack, they're listless and partially unresponsive because of a stroke. They can't push a button. What happens to those people? And we just got deeper and deeper and deeper, and I saw people dying and escalating to nursing homes. And we did a research project on about 50,000 customers they service. It tipped over wheelchairs, cuts and bleeding, and amazing to see how many people trip and fall over a drawer they left open or a dishwasher door when they're moving about the kitchen putting dishes away and they forget it's there and they turn and they fall and they shatter a shoulder and fracture a cheek. And so when it's happening to your own family, and then you see the magnitude of how much of that goes out in the marketplace, He said, you know, the docs are out there, the hospitals are out there, all these health professionals, medical equipment, home health agencies, the people are out there serving these customers and they don't have the best tools. I want you to put together the best in-home tool. I'm going to give you the best emergency response service in the industry. And together we're going to change everything. And it took him 2.5 years of that conversation building before I felt like this was the time and I made a commitment. And since I did, it has been hard to focus on anything else. You know,
the thing I think, especially just with your last statement, so much of the time people don't understand that it requires ongoing conversation and patience to reach your goal. But now that you have this partnership, where is your business headed to in the future?
Well, it's interesting. You know, we did away with necklace pendants and we put together this package that is very comprehensive. I mean, we're monitoring environmental dangers and we're reminding people to stay compliant with their treatment plans, check your blood pressure, you know, take your insulin, take your medications on time. We have ways where our systems know if somebody's been down and not moving. So even if they're unconscious, we provide support. Interesting is we began to research, because I'm a big proponent of planning. Plan. Know everything about what's been there, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And this is a mistake that an entrepreneur makes, a big mistake. There are a lot of people that get these ideas and they think they're the coolest things ever, but they never actually went to the marketplace and asked the customer if this worked for them and their lifestyle. Would it be adopted? You've got to start with the customer. Then you got to move back and you got to decide, how are we going to bring this to the customer? And that's another mountain of challenges and planning and details to deal with, especially like with us, we deal with health professionals, right? So we put together a program that was best suited for the customer, backed through the health professionals, designed a distribution program that was seamless, had that back-end service, got the best suppliers, you know, the best partners, global companies that distribute technology products in hundreds of countries. But through that, you know, this kind of divine intervention, you know, this thing occurred. We got tied to a university that had a research project that had been going for 15 years. They'd been backed by Pfizer and Merck and United Way and the CDC, and they had a lab that analyzed gait and balance. And it was so sophisticated that they could put somebody through this motion capture system across these floor sensors and see if they had the onset of Parkinson, or if they had had a mini stroke that they weren't showing the kind of evidence that a doctor would be able to perceive through human observation. And I was fascinated with it. And you say, well, where's the company going next? We have a solution that I think is best in class. And we are serving our health partners in ways they've never been served before. We are improving patient outcomes, compliance with treatment plans. We're offsetting the rising costs associated with their business. We're providing a revenue stream, not just saving lives, extending lifespan, and reducing pain and suffering. All these things have been great. But through the clinical research, we got very fascinated in the capabilities of that lab. We duplicated the lab in partnership with this university, went out, started screening thousands of people across the country, started tying into Apple iPhones and Google Glass and mobile devices, and now are into developing patents and extraordinary intellectual property to bridge in-home monitoring with mobile devices, cameras, and new technology that has never before been introduced to the marketplace. I think that the electronic caregiver of tomorrow is something that will transform the industry from top to bottom. It'll change the efficiencies, the capabilities, the economics, and the industry forever. And that's where we're going, because we're entrepreneurs and we think big.
Speaking of that, when you look at, I heard you got a little bit emotional when you started talking about the concerns that you have for people who have mobility issues, whether they're someone who's 20 years old or whether they're somebody who's 80 years old.
Yes.
And they fall. I get a sense that you're a man, although you're very formally directed when it comes to business, I think there's a big heart underneath all of this that drives all of this.
Well, we do. Our staff is crying half the time. I mean, we've got reps across the country that are in this opt-in text program, and they're seeing customers, that they just handled a week or two ago that they'd been working on for months. No, I don't know if I need that. And all of a sudden, the big cardiac event comes, the stroke comes, the fall comes, the unexpected, middle of the night incident. And it is moving. You form a relationship with these people, and then their families call. And they start telling we never would have seen, another Christmas together. We just had kids. She just became a grandma. All of this would have been missed if it hadn't been for our meeting and this service. And, they're crying. Then your team starts crying. It's about life. And when you see the condition that people are in when they're down, I mean, we've had people before they got a system, and sometimes you say, how do they survive? Falling over a walker, and now you got a broken hip, fractured ribs, a head hits the side of a table on the way down. They've got a contusion on the head. They've got blood sting in the eyes. The phone's right there. It's right across the room on an end table. When they go to move, that fracture shifts, and the pain is so striking, it's like you just put a javelin through their heart. It takes 4 to 5 minutes for these people to resign themselves to it's over. Before you met, you could have talked to them about falling, and they'd say, I've fallen before, and I'm fine. I get up, I keep going about my business. It's that day, right? The bone breaks, and they cannot make a phone that they can see that's just feet away from where they are. We find them, 12 and 18 hours later, and they didn't have a way to summon help, and they're covered in their own waste, and they have the formation of blood clots, which started right at the moment of the trauma. They have their weight compressing and cutting off blood flow and oxygen to tissue that's damaged, and that damage gets a lot worse. And, you see in some of these environments, these nursing home environments and things, you're not supposed to do this in many of these locations, but, their fall prevention isn't one of these wonderful systems. It's passive and watching out for the family member and summoning help when they're in emergency. It's strapping them to a bed. It's restraining them to a chair so they don't fall and hurt themselves. And, the difference of when you're in that moment of having somebody speaking to you over our system in your house, echoing through your house, in a matter of 90 seconds, and letting you know that the doctor's been informed, we know the preferred hospital, your daughter's, on the way, we've contacted her, the paramedics are en route. Calm down, honey. I want you to breathe through it. I know it hurts. Is there anything else you can tell me? But, they're able to do some assessment. But that reassurance to keep the distress down and the confidence up, and having somebody kneeling at their side. Our people don't disconnect until somebody is kneeling at that victim's side, starting to attend to them. And there's just no substitute for that. I mean, when you're hurt and you're broken and you're suffering, it's really the fear, the terror, the paralyzing fear, and the suffering that goes on for endless hours. Every minute feels like, an hour, right? You got to get them there. 7-8 minutes changes everything. Changes everything. I mean, that's the difference of being able to come back home, be here in 9 months and a year, continue living, not in a nursing home, not in a $76,000 a year nursing home, not in a $50,000 a year assisted living environment, but being independent and having your dignity, and not having gone through those extended hours of trauma. That's what we do, and it's moving.
So we're about out of time for segment 2, and one of the things that I heard so clearly that you said, electronic caregiver saves lives. That you're not in the security business, you're in the life-saving business.
Yeah.
So where can people, again, find out more about who you are and what you do?
Well, the easiest way is to go to Google and Google the Electronic Caregiver, or go to electroniccaregiver.com, and that is our tagline. We save the lives that other systems can't.
Tony, I want to thank you for being on the show today. I think
you're very
both
welcome.
segments were great. I look for great things in your future. From the Business Lounge, this is Dave Wright, where we talk to real people about real business and real success. Until the next time, we'll see you there.